This is a show with no particular niche, baby. It's always about hanging out. Maybe we'll laugh at some stuff, maybe we'll learn something new, but it's always about hanging out, me and you. Hi, hello, and welcome to That Thing with James, a podcast about nothing in particular. I'm your host, James. Yo, welcome. If it's your first time here, hi, thanks for tuning in. If it's not your first time here, hi, thanks for tuning in again. Wow, I'm having so much fun today. Oh my goodness. I just saw a TikTok video about a woman who apparently is just getting a rash of men on Hinge. I've not been on Hinge in many years, but apparently it still exists, and apparently you can still do like a sort of audio thing in the DMs, the direct messages. And apparently there's a rash of men. I think she said she was in NYC. That would be New York City, the city of New York, which used to be called New Amsterdam, which makes a lot of sense. It was a Dutch trading port, and it is kind of a swampy area, sort of like Amsterdam. It was built sort of like that. Anywho, there was a rash of men who on Hinge claim to do let me rephrase that, an impressive Tim Allen from Home Improvement impression. Now, if you're very young, you may not be familiar with any of those things I just said. Tim Allen was a snitch and also a stand-up comedian and actor who was the main guy. He was the main character in this show from the 90s called Home Improvement. So Tim Allen and his friend had, in the show, their own home improvement TV show. I cannot for the life of me think. It's not This Old House. There was another really big like DIY home improvement show that was on air in the 90s. Whatever the fuck it was called, it doesn't matter. But in the show, Tim Allen did this thing regularly. Instead of going, huh? He would go, That was the main thing. You know how some people have catchphrases like another 90s reference here, because I'm 37. I was born in 87, the end of 87, really. In the 90s, there was another show called Family Matters, in which there was an iconic character called Urkel. And Urkel was this nerdy kid with big, thick glasses and bright suspenders. And he had a tagline, a catch line that people would say, "Did I do that?" Yeah. So Tim Allen's "Did I do that?" was, Now, in this TikTok video that I started this story with, again, there are multiple men that this woman, possibly who lives in New York City, maybe, has found a lot of men on Hinge claim that their special talent is doing the Tim Allen, And the first one was good. He did 3 times in a row. It was all, It was pretty good. But then from there on out, it just got progressively worse. These men were not as good at their Tim Allen impression as, I would say maybe half of them were not as good as they thought they were. And then the other half said they did a good Tim Allen, but they know that they don't do a good Tim Allen. So it was like, like literally there was one that went, And that got me talking to myself, as I so often do. I'm walking around my apartment / my podcast studio going, giving no one in particular a little training on how to do that sound, the sound. And what I came up with is, it's like you're clearing your throat. You got to clear your throat, except it goes up at the end, like one of the 4 tones in Mandarin. like that. So you just clear your throat and then end with a you go up. So let's do it together. 1, 2, 3. Let's clear our throat and then go up. 1, 2, 3. And then that got me thinking, okay, I bet there's a Japanese dubbed version of Home Improvement. And that sound must be great because you already hear something similar in a lot of anime. I'm going to do it right now. Nani? Nani? Does the Japanese dub go, Nani? And then does Tim Allen go, so desu ne? So desu ka? Nani? I want to find Japanese dubbed Home Improvement. I swear to God, it's got to exist. It has to. Do you know about it? People on YouTube, people listening to this on the audio only apps. This show is on YouTube, okay? You just search up That Thing with James. My channel will pop up, and this video will be on that channel, or the video for this episode will be on that channel. And there you can comment and let me know. Hell, drop a link to a Japanese dubbed full episodes. I want full episodes. Give me at least one dubbed in Japanese so I can go, so desu ka? You know? Zoinks! Raggy! Oh, yeah, it's kind of like that dog. What's his name? From Scooby-Doo. What's the dog's name? Anywho, yeah, today we're finishing. We're going to finish. We've got 2 chapters left. We're finishing the Death Note X Columbo fan fiction titled Murder by the Notebook. Yeah, babies. And before we get into it, real quick, I have a Patreon, and I've got a lot of bonus episodes that you can access by becoming a patron at patreon.com/thatthingwithjames. Once again, that is patreon.com/thatthingwithjames. To those of you who are already patrons, thank you so much. You rock. And if you want more episodes of this show because of my pretty visage and my soothing voice, go to patreon.com/thatthingwithjames and become a member. And you will get 30 days of access to all 120 plus bonus episodes. Yes, there's a whole lot there. And it helps out a lot. Okay. Patreon.com/thatthingwithjames. What else? I've got show email, my handles for my socials, and my show subreddit. All the names and the links are written in the episode description. So if you want to check those out, it's there. One more thing before I get into it. I was listening when I was editing the audio for the last episode, the previous episode prior just to this one. It was a little slow. I was giving myself acting notes. I was taking on director mind, and I was telling over and over again. I could hear myself telling my recorded self something I heard so much when I was learning acting in college. Take the air out, meaning too much dead air. You're going too slow. And I was going too slow in the last episode. So I'm going to try to remedy that this episode. Well, no, do or do not. There is no try. I endeavor to remove the dead air in this episode. Albeit, I must preface, I have not read what I'm about to read yet. So if I stumble, that's the reason why. Anywho, let me get set up, get some water, and then we will jump into the final 2 chapters of Murder by the Notebook. Just a second. If you haven't listened to the previous 2 episodes yet, You're jumping into the end of a story here of a fan fiction someone else wrote that I'm reading. And if you want to get caught up on the story, I encourage you to go listen to those 2 episodes first. But if not, if you're okay jumping in at the end, cool. Let's do it then. Here we go. Murder by the Notebook, written by Hype Writer on AO3, Chapter 5. Do you hear the bells? Mail, 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 must get the mail. It's 8:03, you're late, they don't care. He does, so what if he does? Fuck him, I hate him so much, I swear. I will make his death last 23 days. He will rue the day he boarded that plane. I hate him, hate, ow. My fucking head, my fucking migraine, Misa, next, dad, next. All of them need to die. Sick of this, sick of this pretending, hate pretending, no God. No glory, male, sick, male hate, migraine, male, fuck, walls closing in, it's actually happening, so tired, call out, sleep, can't need appearances, must stiffen upper lip, can't let him win, he won't win, he will not fucking win. The swirling jelly of Light's brain was battered by storms. He could no longer remember how long it had been since the American had entered his life and wrecked everything. Every one of his senses ached as he walked up the steps of the office building. He wasn't sleeping well anymore. He was paranoid. He hadn't taken the watch off his wrist in 3 days, even to shower. Somewhere, deep within the recesses of his subconscious, a tiny part of him was self-aware enough to feel his mask finally slipping. Autopilot took control as he opened the mailbox. He flipped through the envelopes absent-mindedly as he made his way inside. It wasn't until he got to the elevator that he saw the small stationery with an American flag stamp. The handwriting on the envelope was in English. Most importantly, the return address was made out to a Maria Columbo. His hands shook as the rest of the mail fell from his grasp. He tore the letter open with feverish desperation, no longer caring. Therein lay his salvation, his escape. It was all over now. He read as fast as he could. My dearest Frank, your daily letters have been a salve on the wound of distance. Los Angeles is nothing but a cruel, desolate graveyard of dreams without your smile to part the smog. When you told me you had to extend your stay, that things weren't catching as quickly as you'd hoped, I wept. I feared this Kira fellow would get the better of you. How delighted I was to finally read that you were closing in. Your persistence is what inspires me most about you, and I hope you know that. About what you said, about should all else fail, should heaven fall to earth and bells ring for you, I hope they ring for us both. You've given me a wonderful life. I wouldn't wish to live it any other way. But you will not fail. I know this much. I hope to time this letter to the morning you told me you'd apprehend him, preferably read after the arrest. Please call me when it's all over. Cost be damned. Yours forever, Maria. Frank. His name was Frank. Frank Columbo, Lieutenant Frank Columbo of the Los Angeles Police Department, homicide. How lovely to make your acquaintance, Frank. My name is Death, and I come with tidings of great joy. Yagami Light grinned, snickering. The snicker gave way to a chuckle, then a laugh. Before long, he was doubled over, cackling maniacally as he shakily opened the secret compartment of his watch. Out slid the small sliver of paper. Click went his pen. He was done. He continued to stare at the name, not believing it. Frank Columbo. It was over. He threw his head back and laughed triumphantly, filling the elevator shaft with echoes of his nefarious glee. "What's so funny?" that gravelly voice called out, snapping him out of it. The elevator door had just opened, and all his favorite co-workers stood in a semicircle to greet him. The letter was folded behind him, and with sleight of hand, he was able to slip it into his coat sleeve. "I was just remembering a great joke, Detective." "I love jokes," Columbo replied, unblinking. He had a rather comically large cigar stuck between his teeth. The very sight of it made life stifle more laughter. "You wouldn't get it," he said softly, hands trembling as he counted down the seconds in his head. "You got something to do with the mail?" "Or it got something to do with the mail?" "No. Why?" This time, Soichiro responded. "Where's the mail, Light?" It was stern in the way only a father scolding his son could be. Light suddenly realized his father had shaved and showered. The glassy, broken look in his eyes was gone. He looked as though he'd been carved from marble. "I forgot to get it this morning. I can just go down and..." "Light, there's cameras all over this building," Aizawa interrupted. "You should know that better than anyone. You grabbed the mail, stepped inside, then you came up here empty-handed." Something was wrong. Perhaps he'd lost count of the seconds. Suddenly, he realized Matsuda was nowhere to be seen, and Columbo was still smirking. Shouldn't it have happened by now? "Been waiting on a letter from my wife," Columbo piped in, remarkably articulate for someone unable to move his teeth. "Didn't happen to see it, did you?" "A trap? A trick? So what? What do they have? Missing mail?" His mind was racing as he searched for a good foothold for reasonable doubt. "Would someone care to tell me what the big deal is?" he barked, leaning into his frustration. "Is this a surprise party for me, or do we not have work to do?" Aizawa sighed, sick of the dance. "Look, asshole, when I said there's cameras all over, I mean all over, including the elevator." Light's blood froze in his veins as adrenaline surged through his body. His pupils dilated, his skin curdled into goose flesh, his heart lost rhythm for 2 beats. Before he could even open his mouth to protest, an unseen figure grabbed his hand and twisted his arm, pinning it to his back. "Get the watch," Soichiro shouted. Sure enough, Light felt the metal band depart from his skin in a gross peeling sensation. "Got it," came Matsuda's voice from behind him, triumphant. Of all the people to disarm him, this one hurt the most. He was on his stomach, prostrate before his accusers. Columbo approached him slowly, as though he were approaching a firework that hadn't exploded. "Maybe it'd make you feel better to know that you're definitely the most dangerous fella I ever dealt with," he began. "For a while there, I didn't think I was gonna get you at all. Then you said Then you said what you said about manipulating the Shinigami or whatever, and I realized, oh." He clapped his hand to his forehead comically. "But you know what really gave you away? Your calluses. You have such rock-hard calluses on the tip of your index finger and thumb. I felt them immediately the first time we shook hands. And it was so odd to me because you never seemed to actually do any paperwork. Everything after that well, I guess you could say things fell into place." "You were right, sir," Matsuda chimed in, and now holding Light in place with the bottom of his shoe. "There's a secret compartment in the watch where the battery normally is. There's a little piece of paper here. He definitely wrote your name." Matsuda suddenly yelped, telling Light that he had touched the paper and now could see Ryuk watching from the couch. He didn't even have to look at the Shinigami to know he was cackling. "Let me see that." Columbo puffed through smoke rings. Light was struggling to see them, but he heard his reaction. Oh, good God, the detective blurted. He sounded surprised, but not frightened, as though someone had merely jumped out as a prank. Take it you've been watching me the whole time, eh? Guilty. Oh yeah. Guilty as charged, officer, came Ryuk's tickled reply. Name's Ryuk, and I must say, it's been fascinating to watch you work. Another bellow of laughter, like shattering glass against the flesh. Matsuda shivered. Let me find out who's reading here. I tell you what. A while back, this individual sent... Wait, who the fuck is saying... Hold on, give me a second. Here's the problem with this. They did not mark who the fuck's talking, and it's not clear, especially with the number of characters. So I'm guessing this is Columbo here. So I'm going to do Columbo's voice. Well, I tell you what. A while back, this individual sent a mocking message to any cops investigating him that you guys liked apples. Could I interest you in a little gift basket for your cooperation? I just need to know what happened to this Rem character everyone keeps talking about. As he spoke, Soichiro silently went to the kitchen to retrieve a large basket of fresh, rosy, red delicious apples. Side note, red delicious fucking suck. They are anything but delicious. They're mealy, dry, flavorless. A god of death deserves better than that. I wouldn't say no to an indulgence or two, the god snickered. Soichiro and those who hadn't touched the paper scrap were watching in confusion as, to their eyes, the apples floated out of the basket and disappeared, one chomp at a time. Columbo turned his attention back to Light. Good thing Frank was my father's name, right? Maria ain't my wife's either. This letter actually came yesterday to my hotel room. I just put it in a different envelope and forged her handwriting as best I could. I figured you wouldn't look hard enough to notice. And you didn't. It was too much fun. He couldn't bear... too much fun. It's too much fun for me. It was too much. He couldn't bear to listen any longer to this grease-stained idiot threw his weight around. In a sudden motion, he thrashed with his legs, knocking Matsuda off balance just enough to gain the upper hand. But by the time everyone had their guns drawn, he was on his feet with Matsuda as his hostage. He pressed the barrel of his service weapon against Matsuda's temple hard enough to bruise the skin, and held him as a shield. "Ryuk!" he screamed. "Give me the ideal. Give me the fucking eyes. Matsuda is going to write your name, detective, or else I'll paint the walls with his pathetic excuse for a brain." Everyone was desperately searching for a clean shot, but there was none. Columbo, unarmed, refused to show an ounce of fear as he stood in front of them. He reconciled that if Light were to turn his gun on the others, he could at least make an attempt to block his aim. Seconds dripped like molasses. Ryuk observed the standoff closely, trying to predict what would happen. Once he realized the comedic potential, he shrugged. "Sure, why not?" he chuckled. "Go nuts, you lunatic." The instant Ryuk snapped his fingers, searing pain blinded Light for a fraction of a second, forcing him to blink several times while keeping his grip on Matsuda. When he reopened them, everything fell into place. The world was tinted red, all other colors removed. It felt as though he had donned polarized sunglasses he could never take off again. Above his father's head floated Yagami Soichiro, with several swirling numbers below it to indicate his remaining lifespan. He recalled how Misa had described it once, how the numbers only made sense if you stared at them for long enough, which was hard to do without people noticing. He scanned the room, seeing everyone's full names and storing the information for later in his mind. It was then that his eyes fell on Columbo, and all the fight left him. The detective was glaring at him with the most stoic disdain he had ever seen on a man's face, and above his head floated more numbers than anyone else. They swirled much more erratically than anyone else's, and were also constantly changing. The comparison that popped into his head, in spite of everything, was of a movie he'd seen once. A teen angst-ridden action flick about hackers that portrayed computer code as scrambled numbers constantly zipping around the screen at breakneck speed. It was the name, however, that broke him. John Columbo, Adam Columbo, Carson Columbo, William Columbo, Peter Columbo, Paul Columbo, Benjamin Columbo. Every time he blinked, the man's first name was different. The blood drained from his face. He lost all feeling in his hands. You don't just think it's death gods out there, do ya? Oh, sorry. You don't just think it's death gods out there, do ya? Columbo had said. What had he meant by that? Matsuda felt Light's grip slacken as he seized the opportunity. He dropped the watch, stomped on Light's foot, and elbowed him in the chest as hard as he could. The instant he was able to break free, he cried out, "Now!" and dove to the floor, grabbing Columbo on his way down. Soichiro fired first, planting a slug in the left lung of the monster he had once called Son. It was followed by a storm of bullets, firing squad style. Most missed, but enough found their way to make the point. He did not hear them. He simply stared at the man, writhing and screaming as he fell to the ground. He had aimed for the heart. He wanted it to be quick. He should have known he wouldn't be that lucky. "Stop!" Columbo was shouting, waving his arms, struggling to get up. But Matsuda held him down to the floor until the ringing in his ears stopped. When he finally let go, the aged detective scrambled to his feet with agility that seemed impossible. Light was stubbornly trying to breathe deeply, an act of defiance that was only flooding his lungs with blood. He had managed to prop himself into a sitting position against the elevator, his innards leaking through his ruined dress. He could see his former colleagues trying to comfort each other, Aizawa in particular heaving his shoulders with sobs. Lieutenant whatever the hell Columbo knelt down in front of him as if to give him his last rites, but no such absolution came. "I didn't want it to happen this way," Columbo spoke, his accent much fainter than normal. He sounded older, too, as if the weight of the world had suddenly caught up to him. "Honest, I didn't. Even you deserve a trial." Light spat a wad of blood onto his face as a reply, and then tried to speak. He tried to tell the freak in front of him what a filthy, wretched worm he was. He tried to defiantly declare that his work would be carried on by disciples. He tried to tell him to go to hell. Instead, he gurgled on his final breath of fluid and blood, then ceased all movement. His vision dimmed as all sound faded into tolling bells. He saw a figure who hadn't been there before, hunched over, messy hair, a shirt that was too baggy for its own good. The figure had his hands in his pockets. He wanted to call out to the figure, but it was too late for final words now. Let me get a sip of water, and then we'll read the final chapter. Be right back. Chapter 6, Epilogue, Grains of Sand. "Next, inmate 3814, the guard called out. Misa took a step forward in line. Today was a break in routine. She had a visitor. She had kept good behavior, and this was her reward. No idea who it was. She was certain every bridge had burned during the fallout of the day Kira fell. She was trying not to think about it, but she was failing. "Next, 1252. Another step forward. All she did these days was think about it. The plea deal that she'd signed. The big showboat spectacle the media made of her fall from grace, the tabloids wallpapering every newsstand in every city. The world had been hungry for Kira's head, and with Light dead, they had turned to his right hand instead. Assets had been seized, accounts locked. She had nothing more than the jumpsuit she would wear for the rest of her life. Next, 2722. Another step forward. The woman in front of her seemed really happy, practicing what she'd say to her husband, her boyfriend or girlfriend. Misa shook the thought out of her head. It had been the American that had saved her from death row. The world had praised him as the man who'd taken down Kira, but he had shunned the fame and glory. No talk show circuit, no book deal, not even a tell-all interview with Time. It didn't surprise her, though. Instead, he had worked night and day with Tokyo authorities to give her a sentence of life without parole. Hardly a Christmas miracle, but at least she had more time to get things in order before. Next, 3279. Another step forward. She was next in line. Her mind scrambled away from the previous train of thought, going all the way back to the days after Light's death. The government had wanted to cover the whole thing up, make it seem as though he'd been killed in the line of duty. Trouble was, that meant either pretending Kira was still at large, or announcing that they had both died conveniently around the same time. What's more, Soichiro had refused to play along with any cover story, his argument being the police deserved the humiliation of admitting Kira had worked with unlimited access to federal resources. He had retired quietly, with dignity, with a 50% boost to his pension in exchange for signing an NDA saying he could never write a book about the whole thing. Not that he ever would, of course. He had given no parting words, neither forgiveness nor condemnation. Not even a look in her direction when she had turned herself in with Columbo. He had simply bowed out. She hoped he was doing well with his family. Next, 3882. The guard's voice softened upon seeing her. Misa, trying to avoid looking at the name above her head, saw the fear and hatred in her eyes and accepted it. The guard's eyes softened a bit, not much, but enough. Booth at the end is free, she said flatly as she removed the restraints around Misa's wrists and ankles. Misa made her way to the other side of the visitation room. She passed wives venting to their spouses, mothers comforting their children, and daughters begging their fathers for forgiveness. She fit into none of the categories she had made up in her head, and it wasn't until she reached the last booth and sat down that it all made sense. A familiar, kind face was on the other side of the reinforced glass, and the mix of emotions she felt made her sick. According to her Shinigami eyes, his name was currently Salvatore Columbo, until she blinked next. She sat down and picked up the phone. "You?" was all she could manage to say. She hadn't spoken aloud in 3 days, and her voice sounded raspier than she could remember it ever being. She was unable to stifle a small chuckle at the idea of her old vocal coach losing her shit over it. "Me," came the even raspier voice of the detective. "Heard you was on good behavior, so I thought I'd pop in and say hello, see how you're doing." "Los Angeles is just a short drive from here now," she mused, pushing through the pain in her larynx. He snickered like an old man, hinting at the presents he had already bought for his grandchildren. You know, I didn't want any of the lights and cameras stuff from what happened, but the Christmas bonus that year was like 8 Christmases put together. Chief insisted, and my wife, well, we'd never be able to have a proper vacation, and she'd always wanted to visit the countryside out here, you know. No tourist traps, no gaudy showboating, just a nice week in a rented house an hour away. She's still sleeping off the bottles we opened last night, and I figured, why don't I check on Misa? Someone has to, right? She sighed. "You're good at that, aren't you?" she replied. "You're always just around, just so happen to be in the neighborhood, just so happen to be passing by, just so happen to overhear. Do you even have a wife?" He looked taken aback, but not offended. "Of course I do," he said adamantly. "Married to the love of my life." "How long?" There was a pause before he answered. Pretty damn long, I guess you could say. It was her turn to laugh. Of course. What did I expect? I mean, Mr. Columbo, please just be honest with me for a minute, please. What even are you? To her surprise, he seemed to heavily consider the question, his good eye slowly scanning around the privacy booth area before answering. I'm just someone who knows who to talk to and what to look for. That's really all I do. Everything else that happens is consequential of that. It wasn't much of an answer at all. She made her disappointment clear. Are you even human? That's a hell of a question to ask, ain't it? Hell of a world to live in, Lieutenant. She wasn't budging. He nodded, relenting. Let's just say, it's not an easy question. I'm no clairvoyant. I ain't omnipotent. I'm not invincible. I'm just experienced. I've seen a lot. I've done a lot. And I know a lot. She shrugged. Fine. So why are you here then? He gave her a soft, knowing smile. You know, what you did, turning yourself in, that took real strength. Whatever else you've done, that's something to be condemned. And that stuck out to me. I could count on one hand, with most of my fingers blown off, the number of times that someone I've been chasing has done that. Most folks in your position, they go all in, for better or for worse, and better never works out for them. I think that's saying something about you, about your situation. His smile faded. He leaned forward before continuing. I can't lie to you. You did some horrific things. But I also know what you were dealing with. That kind of relationship, he shook his head empathetically. I know how it can be. My first girlfriend was a horrible influence. Not nearly to the extent of yours, but she had her vices, and let's just say she knew how to pluck my strings. I stole cars, I robbed trucks, I ran scams. I did a lot of nasty stuff I'm still ashamed of, and a lot of stuff was done to me. He was gravely serious now, unflinchingly honest. She wondered if this was the first time he had ever talked about this. Needless to say, what I did was what I did. And I rightly got held accountable for it when the jig was up. But I know all too well how much reality can bend to suit one's need to be seen, to be appreciated, to be loved even. I can't pardon you for your crimes. That ain't my prerogative. But I think you got a better chance of finding peace than you think. At the end of the day, that's what matters most. Atoning and finding peace. There was nothing to say for a while. It was the most vulnerable anyone had ever been with her, and it was coming from a man who'd arrested her. She couldn't help but appreciate the irony. Do you know how long I have? If I had to guess, I'd say you have enough time to do some good. Write a tell-all. Warn people about your powers you played with. Warn people about the powers you played with. Spearhead the campaign to destroy any more of those books that come to fluttering down to us. He shrugged humorously before continuing. Or take up gardening. I've spoken to the warden personally and arranged for you to have more lax security, more privileges. Do something fulfilling, whatever you do, and take heart in it. She cocked her head to the side. Your eye darted up, she whispered. You know exactly how much time I have left, don't you? The twitch of a smile he gave didn't answer one way or the other. Be safe, Misa, he concluded. I'll be writing you every so often to see how you're holding up. And if it's any comfort, I'll be there when it happens. Then he hung up his phone before she could ask any follow-ups. Ever the gentleman, however, he waited for her to stand before he did himself, and he exited the building unceremoniously. Next, 2156, shouted the guard as she made her way back. It was a long walk to her cell, and she wasn't looking forward to dragging chains behind her. She waited for the guards to put her back in the restraints, but they never came. It wasn't until she barked, Do you have somewhere to be, 3882? That, Misa realized, the chains weren't coming back. Without a second more of hesitation, she set off to find the schedule keeper to reserve a day in the garden. That's it. That's the end. What was Columbo? That was a pretty fucking good story, I gotta say. What was Columbo? Why does he have Shinigami eyes? How can he see Misa's life? Why is he so old? What the fuck is Columbo? He's in the right place at the right time. I don't think he's a god of death. Oh, there's comments. I gotta read the comments. Hold on, let me get some water and we'll read these comments. All right, here's some comments. I just scanned through them to see if we could find answers, and I think the answer is we're not supposed to know. And I love that. I love it when when questions go unanswered in a story. I love that shit. Well, not always. Sometimes questions do need to be answered, but it doesn't matter what you do so much as how you do it. With art, you gotta get away with it. Art is getting away with it. So here's some comments. Nice ending. That's a nice ending. Glad she got some peace after being in a crappy situation. The author, hype writer, replies, Misa was... Oh, shit, this just came from December of last year. Wow, this was really not that long ago. Author replied, Misa was never well written, but in a vacuum, that girl deserves a break, for real. I agree. I wish Misa got more. Another person, I love this entire fic, and this is a fantastic ending. I loved this entire thing. Me too. This was a damn good story. This person says, I firmly believe Columbo has a wife. So do I. Even in the actual series, the TV series Columbo, I think his wife's real. I firmly believe Columbo has a wife. She's interested in everything and knows all sorts of people. I'm glad Misa gets some peace and redemption at the end. She's been through a lot. Author replies, between you and me, I always had canon his wife as the reason he's a bit more than human. But don't tell no one I told you that. Someone else replies, this was one heck of an ending. And again, or comments, this was one heck of an ending. And again, I love that you leaned into Columbo being a bit more of a mythological entity. He appears from nowhere and he returns to nowhere. It also took me way too long to realize the reference in the title. And I watched Murder by the Book a while before realizing too. Murder by the Book. Is that a show? Hold on. Murder by the Book. Movie. It's a movie? 2018. Murder by the Book, also known as Alter Ego, is a 1987 movie starring Robert Hayes and Catherine Stewart. A psychopath commits serial murders that seem straight out of mystery novels written by a popular author who might be connected to everything on an entirely different level. Interesting. Murder by the Book. Interesting. Great story. I loved every moment of it. Look forward to seeing more. Let's see here. Someone else comments, that was some good shit. Very much in tone with Columbo. Have a good one. Another comment says, oh my God, I was never expecting something like this from what I initially thought would be a crack fiction. You did so well, and I can say, I feel sad Light died. Author replies, I mean, I was never sad about Light. That boy reminds me of every terrible ex I've ever had, but I'm glad a vulnerability was still there. The other person says, no, you're so real for that. I mean, dying in front of his dad and everything. Yeah, that was a hell of an ending. Another comment, reality bender Columbo. I fucking love it. This was a fantastic read. It hooked me so quickly. I'd love to see more Columbo by you. As would I. Mythological Columbo? That would be fucking fantastic. Anyway, that's it for this episode. I enjoyed that story. I hope you enjoyed the story. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you stick around and catch this week's bonus episode. And once again, go to patreon.com/ThatThingWithJames. You can get access to all the episodes. And if you're already a patron, thanks for supporting the show. And to all of you, thanks for tuning in. And I hope to catch you next time. Bye.